In case you haven't seen my ranking of every Skylanders game, despite all the praise that Swap Force gets, I still put it down at 5th out of 6th place. This is because I think it went backwards from the first 2 games, but I think that Swap Force deserves its own video, why ultimately I felt disappointed by the game, but I couldn't say it was a bad game. But I couldn't say it was a great game either. So in this video, I'll be talking about why Skylanders Swap Force was so mediocre. Just to get this out of the way, when I say mediocre, I mean mediocre for Skylanders game. I still think this was a good game by itself, but it doesn't fit with the quality of the other Skylanders games, in my opinion. Well, except for Superchargers, but we don't talk about that. To know how we started, we need to go back to the beginning of Swap Force. After 2 good years of Skylanders, the 3rd year they came out with Swap Force. Giants improved from Spyro's Adventure and was a better experience overall, so I was hoping that Swap Force could repeat that. But if you read the title, then you could guess that it didn't do that. Maybe at that time I thought it did, but then again, I was a stupid kid, so I can't really say anything about that. But I'm getting off topic. Swap Force releases and it's the best-selling Skylanders game. So, good job Swap Force, but just because a game sold good doesn't mean it's a good game. I'm looking at you, Modern Warfare. Oh! Ooh, shots fired. Wow. Ooh. But like I said, don't let the sales get to your head because it doesn't mean that much. Let's go to the game finally. There's a volcano and it go explodey, and that causes these dudes to be able to swap bodies. That's basically the storyline. I don't really care about the storyline though. At least it kind of makes sense how the Swap Force got their powers. There's really only one continuity error, that the Swap Force were called the Swap Force before they could swap. I really don't know why that is. The game never explains it, but it's not important. Like I said, really gameplay beats story in any game in my opinion. Now, I'm not going to go too in depth into the actual game since in this video, I'm basically just saying why I thought the overall experience was mediocre compared to the other Skylanders games. Also, I'm assuming that you have played Swap Force because, you know, it's not like this is a Skylanders channel or anything. First of all, we have to point out the lack of Skylanders characters from the previous game. Like, come on, Swap Force, I don't think a Hippo dude and a Rhino dude can compare to Persephone. And while I do think Tessa is a better character than Callie, they could have just made Callie better, and we all know that Tessa was just there to fill a role. In the hub world, I don't know. I don't know what I don't like about it, but it just doesn't fit in with a Skylanders game. The hub world is just not that good in my opinion, and you spend a lot of time here. Now the gimmick is great, one of the best ones, and is super inspired. Whenever I play through the game though, I never use swap combos, as I much rather play with the swappers in their original form, because for the most part, I think the swapper's superior form is their first form, which kind of drowns the whole swap gimmick. And if you remember from my ranking every Skylanders game remastered video, one of the reasons why I thought Giants was an overall better experience from SSA is because every level is unique in Giants, and SSA levels repeat, and the style of the levels make you just feel like you're in the same area for way too long because you'll have like 3 water areas and stuff like that. And in Swap Force, even though the graphics are great and look amazing, which let me talk about that real quick. Good God, these graphics are great. Look at that. Oh, they're pristine. Vicarious Visions, you did it here with the graphics, but let me get back to what I was saying. The levels repeat in this game. And look, the levels, they look great, they look amazing because of the graphics, but the fact that the levels repeat, and with levels being way longer in Swap Force, make you feel like you're in the same area for like 5 hours, which is not the best thing ever. You know there's a lot of content though in Swap Force, however, in Swap Force, some of that actually hurts in some aspects. Each level is very big. When I say very big, I mean very big. It could take easily over hours to get everything you want, and I think that's asking too much. I'd much rather prefer a lot of shorter levels than maybe just a bit of longer levels. That's just my opinion though. You can, have a different opinion on that, but in my opinion, I would much rather prefer shorter but more levels like an SSA. And then we get to the multiple element gates and swap zones. And guess what the swap zones do? They take you out of the level and in a new area, completely losing flow of the level you were previously in. And that sucks. In the previous 2 games, none of the elemental gates or giant speed of strings took you out of the level here. But in Swap Force, you go to the swap zone, it loads you into a new level and deliberately takes you out of the level, thus taking you out of the experience. And it just feels like a crumbled up mess. and just makes them feel kind of awkward. Also, the elemental gates are weird because the cross elemental ones, you don't actually need swappers. You can use 2 cores, but if you're lonely like me, then they're kind of useless, really. That's the thing with the gimmick of this game. I only use it when the game forces me to, like in elemental gates. And I don't really use them in swap zones either. I just pick up a Skylander of the swap zone and put it on. Just in the cross elemental gates. That's not great. I should want to use the gimmick more, but I just never feel the use for it besides the cross elemental gates. And I know that Skylanders are for kids, but this game goes overboard. Sometimes it's like this game was designed for babies right out of the womb, like they're just telling you what to do constantly. But I do think Swap Force had some really good features that maybe overshadowed it over the other games. I think, like I said, swap zones I thought were a good idea, but they just were not handled correctly. Let's say some positive things though. Gimmick was amazing, and graphics and presentation is on point. Definitely some of the best graphics I've ever seen. And they are beautiful. I mean, just look at the scenery. It's awesome. Even in 2021, these graphics are still great. Also, Flynn is probably the most funny in this game out of any of the games. I know that doesn't really have to do a lot with the actual game, but thought I pointed out.
According to the map, Iron Jaw Gulch is somewhere to the west. East. Either way, we're heading in the wrong direction. Probably. You know what? It'll be fine.
Also, Swap Force probably has the most post-game content and best post-game content. Probably the most out of any Skylanders game by far. Even with all that though, at the end of the day, I don't know if I could recommend you the game. Which is why, at the end, I think it's best to call it mediocre compared to other games. Now, if you look at it by its own, Swap Force is actually a very solid game. But when you compare it to the other games in the series, Swap Force sticks out like a sore thumb, and not in a good way. Whilst it has some of the best post-game content and gimmick, and some of the gameplay is good, ultimately, the rest of the gameplay holds it back, which is why it got 5th out of 6 in my ranking of the games. And hey, look, it's not a bad game, and if you enjoy it more than me, that's great. I'm glad that you can enjoy it. But whenever I look at this game, and look at other Skylanders games, it just doesn't feel like a Skylanders game, and I made a video about that, but it also just feels mediocre. So that's what I think about Swap Force, and why I thought it deserved its own video. Anyway guys, tell me if you thought that Swap Force was mediocre. I know someone will definitely not agree with me on that. But anyway guys, we guys have enjoyed this video, and thank you guys for watching.